Well, ahead of the annual UN General Assembly this month, RT sat down to talk to Russia's ambassador, and he gave us his views on everything from the Arab Spring and Palestinian statehood to possible new violence in Kosovo.
RT is sitting down with Vitaly Churkin, Russia's ambassador to the United Nations. Ambassador Churkin, thank you very much for sitting down to speak with RT. It seems certain that the United States will use its veto power within the Security Council to prevent any recognition of a Palestinian state. What options would the Palestinians have?
Before we go there, let me address another issue, if I may, because at this very moment we are facing a possible very dangerous escalation. Intention was announced by the Kosovo Albanian authorities in Pristina basically to take over northern Kosovo by force. And another very disturbing element in this situation is that the international presences there, KFOR, the NATO force there, and the European law mission ULEX, which are there in order to preserve peace, they seem to be cooperating with that very dangerous plan of the Kosovo Albanian authorities. So the delegation of Serbia here in New York has sent a letter to the President of the Security Council asking for an emergency meeting of the Security Council, and Russia is supporting this request in order to prevent those dramatic and dangerous developments in Kosovo. But I anticipate that we're going to have some rather interesting debates in the Security Council. First of all, whether to convene that meeting or not. And to me, this will be a reality check on about whether indeed the Security Council, we in the United Nations, are interested in preventing disputes and peaceful mediation of situations like this. So we'll be following those developments, and we'll see what is going to happen in the Security Council.
It's interesting you bring up Kosovo, because Kosovo unilaterally declared its independence, and with the support of the United States and many European countries. This was done outside the scope of the Security Council, and it was done with the backing of the U.S. Yet, when it comes to the Palestinians, the U.S. has already been screaming veto, veto, veto.
The position of the United States is very often not entirely consistent, to put it mildly, because they do tend to apply, like some other Western European countries, they do tend to apply double standards from time to time. And we had this vote several months ago on a resolution of the Security Council about the Israeli settlements. The resolution was essentially composed of quotes, without using quote marks, of course, from statements by President Obama and Secretary of State Clinton. And the United States went ahead and vetoed that resolution in the face of 120 sponsors of that resolution. So this is one of the problems, I think, in trying to put in train negotiations between the Israelis and the Palestinians. If the Israelis get this kind of unqualified support from a country which is trying to play the main mediating role in the Palestinian-Israeli situation, then it does not really help to move matters ahead. But coming back to your very important question, it is going to be one of the interesting challenges for the General Assembly and for the Security Council if the Palestinians decide to bring matters to one of those two bodies of the United Nations, main bodies of the United Nations, or both. This is the point I've been making to Israeli colleagues and people who have been showing up and expressing their concern about the situation in and around Israel, that talks must start between the Israelis and the Palestinians. I know that there are contacts, there are certain requirements which the Palestinians want to see for those talks to start, and I hope the Israelis will see it as something being to their advantage, because in my view at least, sort of pressures of various sorts are going to grow in Israel, especially that we cannot be assured about where the situation in the Arab world is going to go. I mean, we all hope, as I'm sure was the hope of those who were in the front lines of the Arab Spring, that things will evolve towards democracy, etc., etc. But this kind of positive scenario is not assured at all.
So you would say it's in Israel's best interest right now to get back to the negotiations?
Absolutely, and this is what they say too, but unfortunately they come up with various positions which the Palestinians do not regard as acceptable. They don't want to do anything about the settlement activity, which is extremely brisk both in East Jerusalem and on the West Bank. They quite dramatically, Prime Minister Netanyahu, you will recall, rejected something which everybody thought was an obvious thing, a reiteration of the proposition that a deal between the Israelis and the Palestinians must be based on 1967 borders, of course with various swaps which can be negotiated. So the tragedy of it all is that at least all reasonable people seem to know how the outcome of those negotiations should look like, but they keep sort of beating about the bush, and now too many question marks are put about the Israeli vision of their future as neighbors of the Palestinians and in the neighborhood they find themselves in the Middle East.
European countries and the United States, from what's been reported, are trying to push forward a resolution calling for more sanctions against Syria. And this is something that the president of Russia, Dmitry Medvedev, said he's not in support of because additional pressure, he believes, is not necessarily needed, nor would it help. Can you explain to me Russia's position on Syria, because it is a very dangerous...
It is a very dangerous situation. It is a very dramatic and tragic situation. I think the Russian position is reflected very well in something which was a consensus position of the Security Council. First of all, the statement does condemn the violence by the Syrian authorities and excessive use of force. But secondly, it calls on everybody to stop violence, including the opposition, and also it calls for dialogue in order to resolve differences and visions for what should happen in Syria. And very importantly, it calls on the government of Syria to implement the reforms they have announced. So this is exactly our line. I mean, it's not just the matter of pressure on the Syrian government, because after all, in the European Union, the United States have announced quite a few sanctions against Syria already. They are already in place. So essentially, when they ask us to have such a resolution in the Security Council, they are asking us to rubber stamp something which they have already sort of done without asking anybody's advice on the Security Council. But more importantly, our concern is that any sanctions resolution on Syria in the Security Council might be seen by destructive elements of Syrian opposition as sort of encouragement, looking at Libya, that something similar to what happened in Libya may be happening in Syria. And that could have extremely destructive consequences. Our Western colleagues are swearing to us that this is not their intention to use military force. Well, incidentally, we have to remind them that we heard statements and assurances from them of various sorts when we were working on that resolution on Libya, which then were very quickly forgotten in the heat of the battle in Libya. But let's see. I mean, of course, the best scenario is that violence stops in Syria on both sides, and that they carry out those reforms they have announced. I mean, at least we have a situation where the Syrian government has outlined those reforms, have promised those reforms. Unfortunately, we haven't seen any indication from the opposition to be willing to enter into dialogue. I mean, granted, they have their reasoning. They say that many opposition figures have been arrested, that they cannot negotiate in a situation of violence. But in order to get out of the cycle of violence and not to plunge the country into major bloodshed, a dialogue must happen. I mean, we just don't see this scenario of regime change, which some are entertaining, as something which can be beneficial or which can improve in any way the humanitarian or economic or social situation in Syria.
There have been reports that foreigners, in particular Colombian and Ukrainian nationals, have been executed in Libya by NTC armed forces. Do you think that it's time for UN peacekeepers to intervene in Libya?
The Security Council is working on a Security Council resolution, and under that resolution, UN mandate will be spelled out for Libya. And in that mandate, there will be steps taken in order to make sure sort of a law and order system is going to be created in Libya, which will prevent those horrible things which have allegedly happening. But let me also tell you that we are keeping very close track of those reports, and at every opportunity we raise that in our discussions in the Security Council, which we have very often, and making sure that every measure is taken, that the new Libyan authorities understand their responsibility. But of course nothing can be ruled out, because the situation, as you pointed out correctly, is quite dangerous. It's chaotic. We know that some sort of quote-unquote retributions have happened, including some killings of black people simply because they were suspected of having been Gaddafi mercenaries. This is something which caused our unhappiness when we were raising our complaints and worries about absence or lack of proper implementation of Resolution 1973. If you want to protect civilians, the last thing you do is start a civil war. And this is what happened, let's face it.
Ambassador Churkin, my last question for you. As more countries unfreeze Libyan assets, how can the world be sure that the money is being used properly by the new Libyan administration? You were talking about how the Security Council is keeping track of various things in Libya.
First of all, those two resolutions we adopted in spring established the Sanctions Committee, and when the issue of unfreezing assets came up, people went to the Sanctions Committee. So the Security Council Committee and members of the Security Council through the Sanctions Committee will be able to keep track, to double check on how this money is being spent. And the same sort of checks and balances are going to be also included in the new resolution on the role of the United Nations in Libya and on lifting the sanctions from Libya. So it's not going to be a free-for-all process, because of course, now the tendency and the desire of those countries, which is understandable, who have those assets in their hands, is sort of to start helping the Libyan people. So the danger is that too much money is going to be put on the table and disappear somewhere into the Libyan sand, especially under the current still very unstable circumstances.
Ambassador Churkin, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.